just switched to a different network. Do you feel
Yep.
like it's better now?
Yeah, it does. It's more
Great.
smoother. Right. So where are you right now? In United States?
I'm based in San Francisco, but now I'm in Taiwan.
Right. And how is the lockdown at your place?
There's no lockdown in Taiwan. So far, there's only been 6 deaths and 300 cases, and society's kind of function as normal. It's
Right.
been all contained starting from 2 months ago. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, you walk out and everyone's doing their thing.
That's interesting. Okay. So the first and most common question right now is how do you not get bored when you're facing a lockdown? I think that's the most common question the world has right
How,
now.
how do I not get bored, or just a general person?
So I don't think you're facing a lockdown, but for those who are facing a lockdown, how what
No,
would
no.
be
Well,
your
I'm at home. I don't know. I have a lot of work that I choose to pick up. I'm
right?
running 2 companies. I'm writing a new book. I'm rewriting a the first book. I mean, not rewriting, but adding a new edition. Twin
Mm-hmm.
Daughters. I I think there's so many things you need to do. It's not like, and most people I know, they're on their computers all day long anyway. So even if they're just gaming, or you tell them to go out and they don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really just finding the game you want to play in your life, which is what kind of purpose-driven activities you want to do. You can learn new languages, you can play the violin, you can be an activist. There's literally so many things you can do at home. um,
Right.
I think people are just suffering from quarter drive 6 scarcity and patience, which is, when they have full abundance of going out, they don't care, but they're not
Right.
allowed, so they just all want to go out now, and they feel they're
That's true.
suffering.
That's definitely true. All right. So I'll divide my questions into three segments. The number one is
Okay.
the most generic one, which is like basics about the industry. Like why do people need to learn about it? The second one is going to be more focused on the cultural side of things, and the last one is specific towards coronavirus and the current scenario. Okay, they're
Sure.
short questions, so don't get worried.
Okay.
So the first question is, what, which industry do you think is using gamification most right now in their strategies and processes?
When you say right now, it's mean these few years, right? Not
Right.
while. Okay. Yeah. So the sweet spot of education is everything that's extremely important, but
Mm-hmm.
somewhat intimidating or boring, mundane, or something just highly competitive. So
Mm-hmm.
usually you'll see a lot of that in healthcare and education and finance and insurance, sometimes manufacturers. So I think a lot of industries have been adopting gamification. I think the fastest one to adopt is education, because for the other companies, they're still thinking, oh, why do we need to play games? Yeah, they get distracted by that topic. But
Right.
most educators realize that learning should be fun, and their
Mm-hmm.
students are not learning. They're trying to play games. So the education world is the fastest to be enthusiastic about gamification. Now, unfortunately, usually that world has the least budgets, right? So the solution they can adopt into their platforms or classrooms or schools is more limited.
Okay. So I'm doing this workshop that's focused on teenagers right now who are just starting to pick up their industries. What would be your, I'd say, advice to them? Which industry can use this tool the most? Number one, and how is this tool relevant for almost everyone? How is this applicable in their context?
You're referring to the Octasis framework?
Yeah, yeah. Your tools and basically generally gamification itself as a whole tool.
Yeah, okay. So gamification is useful because it helps create desired behavior, right?
Okay.
So I'd say every business has issues with desired behavior and motivation, whether it's their employees should work either harder, or they should take more breaks, they should work safer, they should work more creatively, they should work more collaboratively. The chances are employees are not uh, behave having optimal behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you do good gamification design, you can help with that. Now, most companies probably want more people out there to buy from them, their customers, their clients. And so these customer clients need to be motivated too, right? Whether through a sense of accomplishments, like buying from you is a smart choice, whether it's for Epic Media and Calling, wow, you guys really make the world better, I want to be part of this, whether it's just unpredictability and curiosity, which is, hey, you guys always entertain me. It always seems so much fun and cool. Whether it's social influence, there's my friends are all buying from you, so I'm going to buy from you too, or referral programs, um, or you feel like you want to brag to your friends about things.
Mhm.
So I think almost all the business I've seen would like to increase motivation for their customers and slash or their employees. So I think this is applicable for everyone just because by understanding how the brain works and what motivates the brain, I think there's, as long as you're working with people, it's
Mhm.
always going to be useful. I mean, unless society is just overtaken by robots and motivation is no longer a factor, it's pretty important. And even for yourself, right? There's a lot of people who want to do things. They want to start their business. They want to sign a new international deal,
Mhm.
but they just don't have the motivation to figure things out, to take these steps. So understanding how your brain is motivated and make those important activities fun, exciting, I think that's valuable for at least everyone I've met.
Okay, that's a very good insight. So building upon that question, how many in percentage people or organization right now use this tool? I'm talking about gamification as a whole, to understand their own behavior and their employees' behavior in the organization.
How many organizations use it?
Huh. In percentage.
So, so my expertise is design, create the best solutions. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not a market research firm that goes around and does surveys, and those firms usually say we're the best at what we do. So the only thing I can tell you is the interest that um, of people in my work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a trend, right? At the beginning when I first started, I started 17 years ago, but it became more of a thing maybe 10 years ago. Started with Silicon Valley, and then the rest of the US, and then Europe, and then a lot of technology innovation comes this way. It goes in this pattern. And then Eastern Asia,
Mm-hmm.
South Korea, Japan, China starts to pay attention, India, Singapore, and uh, then the next wave is Southeast Asia and East Europe and South America and Africa. So I think Middle East. So that wave has just that interest of people inviting me to do talks, or people reading my book or following my blog or sign up to my education platform. That's just been growing. I'd say at least just from me, right? I'm just one practitioner in the market. About every year, about 500,000 people are reading and learning
Uh-huh.
about my work, my framework, um, and so I also know that our design work through our clients have impact over 1 billion users experiences. So again, I for your question, I don't know the answer,
Uh-huh.
but these are some of the relevant information that I do
Yeah,
have
that's insight.
that gives
That's
some
insightful.
context.
Right. So my next question is towards the cultural context. How much do you think gamification is affected by the cultural norms or the regional norms? And if there's any case study that you would like to share of something that worked in a very specific culture, or maybe something that didn't work that should have worked but didn't work because of certain cultural or regional norms, that would be very useful.
Yeah, I mean, like when you design for motivation, you obviously want to optimize for your target audience, which cultural regional norm would be different,
Mm-hmm.
right? For instance, if you know the Octalis, Scandinavian countries are more driven by empowerment of creativity and feedback, about
Mm-hmm.
creative, play and learning. If you're looking at like let's say German culture, fun is not so good. Fun is like bad and evil, and it's about perseverance over hardship. Americans are
Uh-huh.
more about individualism, core drive to development, accomplishment. The Japanese culture actually has a bit more of that traditional epic meaning and calling, which is sacrificing for a higher purpose and fitting part. So a good gamification designer, you factor that in and you design good solutions. So it impacts your design. It impacts your gamification design. It
Mhm.
doesn't impact gamification unless you're bad at designing and you think everything works everywhere, and then you'll fail.
Right.
And then even besides the game mechanics and the core drives tied to it, sometimes just the theme.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's like, hey, let's have a fun we've had work with clients that really want to do this cool ninja theme in terms of their avatar or whatnot, and then it's like, oh, but we also want to do business in China, and China has a more tension history with Japan, and they
Mhm.
don't like ninjas as much, right? So things like that, like that's not even the game mechanic design. That's just theme-based stuff, and you just want to take that into consideration.
Right. So, what would be your favorite example of something that worked in a very specific cultural scenario?
Mm, I mean, I don't have a favorite one, but I think, and if it was my favorite, it probably is very long. It takes a long time to explain, but I think there's simple ones that make a point. For instance, in some cultures and countries, like the U.S., there's a lot of individualism, and therefore uh, status rewards, like, oh, you're the employee of the month, right? You're
Mhm.
so awesome, right? That is a good reward, and people want that attention and status. There are some countries that they don't want this at all. They think it's embarrassing. They think, oh, I'm a tool to the boss, the employer, and
Uh-huh.
everyone thinks you suck because of it. um, yeah, so the same design in one culture would be backfire in another culture. Now, another example in terms of, and this goes into the realm of what people consider gamification, but all these kind of pricing rules and
Mhm.
whatnot. So there are some cultures where rebate strategies work really well, which is it's $100 item, but
Mhm.
it says, hey, if once you buy this $100 item, you can mail this out and we'll give you $30 back. So really it's a $70 item.
Mhm.
And so let's say Americans look at that as like, oh yeah, I get this for $70. That's cheap. So they spend $100 and they plan to mail out the thing, but they just get all too lazy. And so they never send it out and they forget. And so the company makes money. But they try to do the same strategy in Japan,
Mhm.
and it failed miserably because almost every Japanese person remembers to mail back the rebate. And so they failed and they had to retreat. So, those are just
That's a
those
very
are not my
interesting
favorite,
case
but
scenario. Okay.
yeah,
So,
those are clear examples.
yep, yep. So, uh, relevant to the current scenario, have you seen any gamification campaign that was supposed to or designed to help people through this pandemic? If so, what is your favorite one?
Um, well, I've seen a variety of things, and of course, again, the pandemic just started, right? So there's not a lot of time for people to like, all right, let's start designing a solution and start building a team about it. There hasn't been enough time, but I've seen some things like, for instance, there is this thing called Folded, and Folded used to, in my TED talk, I talk about it, where in 16 days they helped um, they helped researchers figure out this virus protein structure problem.
Mm-hmm.
The PhDs couldn't figure this out for 16 years, and they made it a game to figure things out, and they did. So this entity uh, made another one for the coronavirus. So it's like you can help understand the virus structure, and they can help researchers combat finding a solution to at least the medical side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Jay McGonigal, who is another person in the industry that I respect a lot, she came up with, and this actually is similar to some of the questions you're asking to the beginning. She came up with a list of things on Twitter about like this day-to-day scavenger hunt at your home, like things to do,
Uh-huh.
things to find, and so it's like you can still have fun and make your home a playground and grow and learn from that. Um, my own platform, Octalysis Prime, what I've been doing is I've been teaching a new kind of movement called the post-COVID resistance, which we
Uh-huh.
see that as almost like the part of the narrative is that, hey, look, in every story, every game, the beginning of every story, almost every story in game or movie, it's like the main character is living in this peaceful, stable life, and then suddenly this world-changing crisis happens, and
Uh-huh.
they have to, and that changes their life, and they start taking steps to eventually become the protagonist and hero, right? And that's like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, right? There's a call to action. The hero rejects it because it's scary, and then the mentor comes and supports them. So, and most people want some kind of higher meaning, this epic meaning called in their lives, but most people just don't have the opportunity to do something like that, and they're stuck in their day-to-day monotonous lifestyle,
Mhm.
just like the heroes in those stories. And I said, look, notice in those stories, it could only happen because of this world-changing crisis, right? For the hero to become the
Mhm.
the hero, the legend of his world. It's like, hey, that's happening to you right now, right? Here's your opportunity, right, to step out, do something different, and actually start your epic journey.
Mhm.
So it shifts from into that, and this is what we call lifestyle gamification, seeing your life as a game and how to process that. So I'm almost seeing like in the Terminator world, after Judgment Day, the remaining humans have to band together and protect humanity. So I'm thinking, okay, how do you position yourself to do this, right? Everything's going to be reshuffled. Countries that are powerful are going to get weaker. Organizations are getting weaker. People with power and influence, they might step down. Old and outdated systems of education and bureaucracy, all that stuff will be replaced. What can you do to position yourself to make that big change? So I think that's how people switch from, at least even for me, right? Instead of this survival doomsday kind of mentality, it went from, oh wow, there's 100 things I need to do to
Right.
do this, publish this, create this, invent this, meet these people,
Uh-huh.
to really become one of the leading forces in this post-COVID resistance. And so, there's a variety of examples of different types, but again, it's still early in the early days. So I'm sure we're going to see better and better and more sophisticated solutions come out.
Right. Okay, so it's a coincidence since you mentioned Matrix. The next question is related to that as well. So let's imagine the Matrix designers of this world decided to change the dynamics, and you are suddenly the mayor of London or someone in the authority to make decisions about this COVID scenario. What would you do impromptu? What would be your strategy towards implementing a healthier lifestyle throughout the city or region you've been moving?
There's a little staticky noise, but you're saying, if I was one of the makers of the Matrix and I can adjust anything I want, what would I adjust in this time
No, no,
period?
no. So let's say the makers of the Matrix made you the president of the United States, right?
Okay,
What would you
okay.
do as a game designer to fix the current scenario?
I mean, if I was the president, I would probably spend more than 10 seconds figuring out what I want to do. So I guess I will tell you, I'll spend a whole week thinking about the question you just asked. It would be
Right.
the most accurate answer. But of course, you're looking for a spontaneous answer. And I think that's related to what I just said, which is, besides all the things that my advisors would tell me, economic stimuli and all those things that I think are, I believe in trusting experts or trusting the right experts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would uh, work hard to install that sense of agency, give people hope, and this is very important, right? Because what is a game? A game is basically a goal
Mm-hmm.
with obstacles in between, right? And you got to
Right.
figure out and every obstacle is actually an opportunity to score points or become awesome or learn new skills and grow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a game, if a game has no obstacles, then it sucks. It's boring. Why would you play a game? You just keep going forward and you win, right? So people know this in games, but in real life, people don't have this mentality. They have this victim mentality. Like every obstacle is like, oh, why does my life suck? Why does this happen to me? It's crap. It's so stupid, right? When
Mm-hmm.
in fact, it's the same thing in a game and out of a game. It's obstacles allow you to become more awesome, allows you to grow and become stronger and win. So I think emotional resilience would be one of the most important things in this society right now, and understand, okay, where this is a difficult stage. We started a very hard game. We're in hard mode. Some people might lose. A lot of people might lose, but it doesn't mean that you should feel like, oh, everything's doomed. You should think about how to play this game well and treat it as, every obstacle is an opportunity, and live your life
Right.
that way. And I've lived my life that way consistently. And and even now I've been doing a lot of good actions. So both in terms of understanding how to manage my money during this time. So I've actually done really well in the past 2-3 months. And I also made a point, I'm not going to short any company, because that's like throwing rocks at a person who's drowning in a well. I just look at what's the opportunity during this time that's growing, that's strong, and that's safe, right? And also I created a new framework about working remotely to help people do remote work. And now in 2 weeks, I've gotten like 7 or 8 podcast interview requests and virtual speeches. Someone asked me to write a book about it. So literally anyone could have published a new framework on remote work, because they now see this new changing world has a need, right? And they now already have a book, but they could suddenly start building a brand name, publishing a book, and companies might invite them as a consultant to help them audit if their remote work is done well or not in terms of team morale and productivity. So now that's just one of the things I'm planning to do, and just do all those things well, play the game.
Interesting. All right. So I'll move towards my last question, which is divided into two parts. Do governments or agencies at the national scale involve game designers, like they involve statisticians and other health experts when planning out a project, or do they usually neglect them?
The general answer is no. Now, I've done some very, very light advisory for
Mm-hmm.
like a few, like the UK government, the Singaporean government, the King of Bahrain, but it's not like I tell them something and they listen and they make changes, okay? And they don't ask me to design full solutions. And honestly, I see some of the things they implement, I immediately, on day one, I know what's the problem. I know why it would fail. And it happens that way. And I know how to fix it too.
Okay.
But no, I think at this time of age, that's not the case. I mean, they still rely on, uh, I mean, in a good case, they rely on uh, uh, different people who, like in economics, economists. And it's interesting because economists is shifting to behavioral economics, which is actually more closer to what we're doing in terms of human-focused design. Not entirely, but closer. And then sociologists, pathologists, and a lot of times political leaders just go with their gut, which is sometimes a problem too. But the worst case scenario is they go with whatever the money tells them to do, the lobbyists or the previous donors, and that's the worst case scenario. That's still better than the ones who see a crisis and they just start to the high corruption places, they try to optimize for how much they can get out of it after this crisis. And that's the worst. That's, every country fails and falters and gets destroyed because of corruption. So, so to that varying degree. But I think things may change over time. Just like esports was not a thing. It was something that's ridiculous. Playing video games and making a living and people watch it and pay money, just like real sports, that was ridiculous 10 years ago. And now it's getting to be bigger than sports, right? So traditional sports. So I think games are gaining more and more legitimacy. A lot of people who are becoming political leaders are also grew up with games, and they might trust game knowledge better. And like I said, 500,000 people are learning about my work every year, and so they might take take what's considered in it more and more seriously. So I don't think it's hopeless, but right now it's basically no. I am not aware of any government that hires game designers to help them solve problems.
Right. So that basically, I think, also answers my second part of the question, which is, what is your favorite national scale policy or project that follows closely through the game design process? And did it work successfully or did it fail?
All right. So I will say that I don't know how the process is, but there's a few ones that are interesting. I'll share one. It's probably my favorite, and it's really because I'm here in Taiwan right now. So, and it's using gamification to collect taxes. And so this happened not even recently. This happened like 50, maybe like 60, 70 years ago. So like around, I think 1958, around that time, um, the Taiwanese government wanted to collect taxes more accurately. And the problem is a lot of businesses, they just say, hey, just give me cash, so I don't have to give you a receipt, so I don't have to report taxes and pay taxes, right? Very common issue. So the US government did two things. Number one, they unified all the tax and invoice, or the receipt and invoice systems. So there's all one system. But number two is they made every receipt a lottery ticket. So now when the business owners say, hey, just pay me cash, I don't want to give you a receipt. They're like, no, I want to play the lottery. You have to give me a receipt or else I'm not going to buy anything from you. And so they're like, oh, well, my customers are demanding it. I guess I have to give you a receipt. And so usually most government just says, oh, we'll fine you if we catch you, if you evade taxes. This is a smart way because it made it fun for the consumer to keep asking for the receipt. And, I think every month you get to play the lottery, and then you could, there's one winner who could make, I think like 30 years of his salary. And then there's small winners that get like, little bonus, all that stuff. So people all have fun doing it. And what's crazy is the next year, the government's tax revenue increased by, I think, what was it, like 72% or something. So the whole country's government's revenue almost doubled because they did this kind of fun game design.
That is a
So
very interesting case study.
yeah, so I like it because it's clean, it's simple, it's innovative, and it created great results. So
Yeah, that was a very successful campaign for sure.